I must tell you about a brother of mine who's a doctor here in New York, in order to illustrate a certain point I wish to get over. When we were children, we used to visit every Sunday afternoon an old couple whom we were taught to call familiarly Uncle Bill and Aunt Hannah. And in the course of the visit, my young brother Tom always used to ask Uncle Bill for a dime. He started this whole affair. Except he grew out of it. And one day my mother said to him, "Now, Tom, the next time we visit Uncle Bill, please do not ask him for anything. They're very poor, and they can ill afford to give you a dime. Now, will you promise, Mother, that you will not ask?" And he said, "I promise." We made the visit the following Sunday. Tom was very good, but just as we were driving away, he said, "Uncle Bill, you know." Now, the only point of the story that I wish to get across is that those of you who are knowing and loving will know what I mean when I say, thanks, thanks, thanks. May the Lord bless you. Well, the burden of this telecast is to be the meaning of Christmas, but in order to do it, we must give you some philosophies of life. Chesterton once said that a philosophy of life was extremely important. He said that when you go to visit a dentist, before the dentist begins to drill your tooth, he has a right to ask you, what is your philosophy of life? Because if your philosophy of life is wrong, he can't be sure that you will pay your bill. An old wise Socrates once said, marry. If your wife is good, you'll be happy. If she's an old shrew, you'll become a philosopher. Socrates became a philosopher. There are only two philosophies of life, basically. And one philosophy of life is this. It is that of man who goes to perfection or happiness or God by and through his own effort. This is the philosophy, for example, of Buddhism, Confucianism, Taoism, philosophy of the ancient Greeks. One reached happiness, it was assumed, by contemplating the gods, or as the Eastern religions still believe, by some form of ascesis and self-discipline, by which, for example, in the Eightfold Path of Buddha, you crush all desires and eventually achieve some kind of perfection. This happens to be the philosophy of many today who have a queer kind of psychologism, which often goes by the name, wrongly enough, of Christianity. They hope that by rearranging their mental states, or by passing on torches to fellow man, or by doing something fairly good in the natural order, that they will attain some kind of perfection. Now, that philosophy of life is actually not very solid. And the reason it is not is because we have to recognize that we cannot lift ourselves by our own bootstraps. Cannot lift ourselves by the lobes of our ears. And we all know that barbarism is not something that is behind us. It is something that is beneath us. We know that there is a beast that dwells within us, and at any moment that beast might break loose. Furthermore, there's a limit to what we can know, and even when we do know, we have enough moral codes. We are powerless to do. There is nothing that gives man such a jolt as being thrown back on his own resources. So there's another philosophy of life. And it is just the opposite. Instead of man going up this way to God, operates this way. God comes down to man. And this is the true, valid experience of the soul. For the soul responds to something rather than takes the initiative. There's a world of difference between the two. Here all the initiative is on the part of man. Here man responds to something. We too often think, for example, that, well, if we have a little spark of love, that God will show himself as the flame. Or if we dress up real nice and wear the costume of virtue, that God will be very pleased and he'll begin to love us. That isn't the way it operates at all. God loved us first. A man who's born blind and by an operation sees might at one time think that, oh, the sun just begins and the mountains and valleys and the rivers and streams are just appearing. They were always there. He just discovered them. Every child, when he reaches the age of 6 or 7, begins to realize that the mother loves him. No, the mother always loved him. The mother loved him before he was born. That is why, incidentally, many never realize how much their parents love them until they begin to be parents themselves. But the love is first. So religion is fundamentally a response rather than an initiative on the part of man. And that's the way nature works. Now let me show you the universe. Here's the hierarchy of creation. This is a peculiar way to draw the world and the universe. You know, sometimes when you think of the condition the world is in now, you sometimes wish that Noah had missed the boat. And for the benefit of those who think the world owes them a living, it's well to remember that the world was here before they were. Well, this is the hierarchy of creation. At the bottom are chemicals, then plants, then animals, then man. Running through the universe is this law. Nothing ever mounts to a higher level except the higher thing comes down to it. For example, if the chemicals, the phosphates, the moisture, the air, the sunshine are to be living things, the plant must come down to them. Plant must descend to them. If the plant could speak, the plant would say, unless you die to your lower existence, you cannot live in my kingdom. But if you die to this lower existence that you have, you will begin to be a living, palpitating thing. And continuing it, if, for example, a plant, mustn't forget how to spell, otherwise I get 1,000 letters. C-H-E-M-I-C-A-L-S. Semicolon. If the plant is ever to live in the animal must come down to the plant. And if the animal could speak, it would say to the plant, unless you die to this lower existence that you have, unless you were torn up from the roots in the earth, unless you were drowned beneath the jaws of death, you cannot live in my kingdom. But if you will surrender your lower existence and be responsive to me, then you will be not just a living thing, then you will be sentient. You can see. You can hear, you can touch, you can move. And if the animal is ever to live in man, man must come down to the animal, lift it up, say to it, you can live a higher life. You must be responsive. Submit yourself to the knife, to the fire. Then you will be a thinking, willing creature that knows science and art, and that with a mind can scan the universe and read the secret of the stars. But shall evolution stop here in progress? Chemicals have no right to say there's no life above them. Plants have no right to say there's no life above them. So there is a higher life above man. And that higher life is God. And if man is ever to be lifted up, God in some way must come down to man. But it is not that simple. These are natures, not persons. The oxygen is not free. The cabbage has no liberty. The animal has no personality, no rights. But man has. These things can be appropriated one by the other by sheer force. But not even the God who made man free would destroy his freedom. If man is ever to be taken up, he will have to go through some process of discipline, it is true. But if he's ever to be taken up, there must be a free act on the part of man. And one day there came out from the great white throne of light an angel of light. An angel. See, have you noticed how common angels are now? For Christmas, isn't it wonderful? An angel came out from the great white throne of light and descended down over the plains of Esdraelon and came to a woman kneeling in prayer. And through the angel, God said to the woman, "Will you give me a man?" Will you give me a human nature? Speaking in the name of all humanity, will you, by an act of freedom, say, "Here is a man"? And she says, "Fiat, be it done." The woman's mission is submission. Surrender. And that man could not be without love, without fire, without passion. But there are other fires than those of the flesh and other passions than those of Eros. And the fire and the passion and the love that descended upon her was the spirit and the flame and the love of God. 9 months passed. And one night, there rang out over the stillness of an evening breeze, out over the white-chalked hills of Bethlehem, a cry. A gentle cry. The sea did not hear the voice, for the sea was filled with its own cry. The great ones of the earth did not hear the cry, for they could not understand how a child could be greater than a man. there were only two classes of people who heard the cry that night: shepherds and wise men. Shepherds, those who know they know nothing. Wise men, those who know they do not know everything. The very simple, the very learned, never the man with one book. Never the man who thinks that he knows. And when they came, they saw a babe whose tiny hands were not quite long enough to touch the huge heads of the cattle, and yet a babe was steering the sun and moon and stars in their courses. Baby feet that did not walk. They could not bear the weight of divine omnipotence. Eyes that might have read the secrets of every living heart that hour. Under that baby brow was beating a mind and an intelligence that formed the universe, along with a human intelligence that would grow in age and grace and wisdom before God and men. And this babe who was born was not a man who made himself a god, was not a man who was an ethical reformer, not just a teacher like Buddha or Socrates, not someone who would develop a consciousness of Godhead as he went on, but someone who from all eternity was God and began to be in time, the only one on earth that ever had a prehistory to be studied, not in the dust and the slime of primeval jungles, but in the bosom of an eternal Father. It shatters our proud minds to think of it. And think of that great and wise and very learned poet Francis Thompson, whose poetry staggers us with its learning. And one Christmas Eve he went into a crib near where he lived, church nearby where he lived in England. And he stood there as this great wise man and thought himself as a child and thought of God coming down to this earth as a babe. And then his mind became simple, divinely simple. And he said in his poem, "Little Jesus, wast thou shy once, and just as small as I? And how did it feel like to be out of heaven, and just like me? I should think that I would cry for my house all made of sky, and the tweaking 'twould distress me, not an angel there to dress me. Hadst thou ever any toys? Like us, little girls and boys? And didst thou play with all the angels that were not too tall, with stars for marbles? Did the things play, "Can you see me through their wings"? Did thy mother let thee spoil thy robes by playing on our soil? How nice to have them always new, 'cause in heaven 'twas quite clean blue. Did thy mother at the night kiss thee and fold thy clothes in tight? And didst thou feel quite good in bed, kissed and sweet, and thy prayer said? Oh, thou canst not have forgotten all that it feels like to be small. Then take me by the hand and walk and listen to my baby talk. That was just his way of understanding omnipotence in bonds, the maker of the stars under the stars, and the creator of the earth, not having place whereon to lay his head. And what does it mean? Why did he come? He did not come to make us nice people. He came to make us new men, to change our natures. Because everything else in nature is being changed by lifting up. Just suppose, for example, this block of marble suddenly began to bloom. Why, that would be something that does not belong to the powers or the natures or the needs of marble. Suppose these flowers suddenly began to move about from one place on the stage to another, as an animal might, seeking out first camera 1, then camera 2, and then camera 3. That would be something that certainly does not belong to the nature of flowers. And suppose a dog should suddenly walk across the stage and begin to recite Shakespeare. But that would be something certainly that does not belong to the nature of a dog. And suppose any of us, who are just creatures, just men, suddenly began to be children of God, so that the divine nature began to pulsate within us, so that we were lifted up by offering our human nature, as Mary offered the first human nature, so that we could in a lesser way be united with divine person, so that his truth, with all that great wisdom, would begin to flood our minds, and then his will and his love would begin to possess us, and would impregnate and suffuse itself over every single love that we had. Oh, if that ever came to pass, and it does come to pass, that would be the meaning of Christmas. That's why the Son of God came to this earth, to make us other sons of God, to make us more than just human beings. It's not easy. It's very hard. You say, oh, I'm a beast. I'm foul. I dare not be lifted up. Remember that he was laid in a manger, and his companions were beasts. That is our hope, our joy, our peace, our Merry Christmas.
Here they are, the Quiz Kids, presented by the makers of Alka-Seltzer. We're on the air with the School Kids Questionnaire. The Quiz Kids, 5 bright-eyed youngsters ready to start another difficult examination. Questions for the examination were selected by Sidney L. James of the editorial staffs of Time and Life magazines from among those you listeners sent in. The sender of each question used will receive a fine new Zenith portable radio within the next day or two. Each of the 5 children on tonight's program will be awarded a $100 denomination United States savings bond by the makers of Alka-Seltzer for his efforts tonight. And the 3 with the highest scores will be invited back next week. And now, the chief quizzer himself, Joe Kelly.
Thank you, Marvin Miller, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The Quiz Kids and myself hope your Christmas has been most pleasurable. Our guest observer tonight is Miss Charlotte Carr, director of Hull House, Chicago's world-famous settlement. And tonight's Quiz Kids are Van...
I'm Van Dyke Peary. I'm 13, and I'm in the 3rd year of Thornton Township High School.
Jones?
I'm Joan Bishop. I'm 14 years old, and I go to the Chicago School for Adults.
Gerard?
I'm Gerard Darrow. I'm 8 years old, and I go to the Bradwell School.
Lois?
I'm Lois Karp. I'm 15 years old, and I'm a sophomore at Lakeview High School.
And Claude?
I'm Claude Brenner. I'm 12 years old, and I go to Sem High School.
And by the way, friends, Claude was born in South Africa and lived there until just a year or two ago. And by the way, Claude, how did you like your Christmas here as compared with Christmas in Africa?
Well, I thought it was wonderful, but it compares very well with ours at home.
Well, fine. Well, say, let's get along here and say, before we really get started, you know, last night, speaking of Christmas, Joe Jr. and myself were trimming the Christmas tree, and he threw a quizzaroo at me that I really couldn't get. And I just would like to prove to him that the quiz kids can't get it either. So I'm going to give you a chance. Now, Santa Claus has 8 reindeer. And if they are hitched up to his sleigh in a straight line, one right behind the other, how many of them could say, I see at least 4 sets of antlers ahead of me? Now, remember, kids, the reindeer are in a straight line, one right behind the other. How many could say, I see at least 4 sets of antlers ahead of me? Van?
Well, none of them, because they can't talk.
Oh! That's right. Is my face red? All right, now let's really get started. Here is the first one. Marley was dead to begin with is the first line of a very famous story. Mrs. H.T. Chapin of Lillington, North Carolina, thinks you quiz kids should be able to identify the story and give its author. Claude?
It's The Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens.
Good for you, Claude. That's right. Mary McDowell of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania says that what you children have been reading in the newspapers, your children and your children's children will read in their history books. She wants to know what significance they will attach to the date September 3rd, 1939. Lois?
The day the war began.
Well, can you give us something definite? We'd like some names.
Well, the governments of France and England declared war on Germany on September 3rd at 11 o'clock.
That's right. That's what I wanted you to say. All right, let's get along to the next one. See, Brewster Lee of West Englewood, New Jersey, went to a hobby show, and he overheard these bits of conversation. He wants you to tell us what hobby each speaker was interested in. Now, here's the first one. A few coats of dope, and your nose block will be completed. Van?
I'd be being interested in model airplanes.
He certainly would. That's the lingo, all right, isn't it?
Yeah,
and
I
the
make
next...
them myself.
Beg pardon, Van?
I make them myself.
Oh, you do? Well, that's certainly fine to know. And the next one here, that block will look nice swinging on a hinge. Are you mounting it? Joan?
Stamp collecting.
Stamp collecting is good. There, we're getting along swell here. Now, 2 out of 3 on this one. You have seen all sorts of sound effects used here in the studio by our sound effects man, but there are no sound effects men in the jungle. Adrian Morgan of Youngstown, Ohio, asks you to explain just how the elephant, the gorilla, and the cricket make themselves heard. The elephant, the gorilla, and the cricket. Gerard?
Well, the elephant trumpets through his trunk, and the gorilla has little pulses in his cheeks that blow out and makes a booming sound, and then he also beats on his chest, and the cricket rubs his legs against his wings. I've heard a poem, How Merry the Little Cricket Sings, for he rubs his legs against his wings, and only the male cricket does that.
All right, thanks, Gerard, and thanks for that nice little poem. That was real cute, just like your cricket. Matthew Epstein of Brooklyn, New York, warns you to watch your P's and T's on this one. He asks you to spell 3 words which he thinks are even harder than the tough ones we had last week. And here they are. The first one is ptomaine. Van?
Ptomaine.
That's right. It can also be spelled without the E, so you're still correct. And the next one is Ptolemy. Claude?
Ptolemy.
No, that's wrong, Claude. Van?
Ptolemy.
That's right. And the third one is tonsorial. Joan?
Tonsorial.
Very good. Very good. Miss Elizabeth Long of Lansdowne, Pennsylvania, sends in a new kind of spelling question. And she asks me to spell the words on the piano. And all you have to do is tell me the 3 words that I spell as I strike the different notes. Now, they're all things that we might have for dinner tomorrow. Simple, isn't it? Very simple. But I'll bet we don't hear any coaching from the audience. Now, here's the first word. And listen closely. And just a second, I'll be over at the piano. Here's the first word. Claude?
Egg.
Egg is good. Good for you. All right, here is the second one. Joan?
Beef.
Beef is good. All right, now watch on this third one here. Joan?
Cabbage.
Cabbage is good. Hooray for you. That was mighty fine. Now, 2 out of 3 on this next one. Glenna L. Wells of Parma Heights, Ohio, asked for some things that might be found on the Christmas tree. For example, an act of courtesy. That, of course, would be a bow, spelled B-O-U-G-H, of course. Now, what about these? Something also found in the sewing basket. Van?
Needle.
Needles, you bet. And the next, baggage. Gerard?
A trunk.
Trunk of the tree is right. And the third, now existing. Gerard?
Present.
Present is right. We really took the old Christmas tree right down there. Now, not forgetting what this day is, Mrs. E.A. Schmidt of Oakland, California, wants to know why Dutch children, when expecting St. Nicholas, put their wooden shoes by the fireplace and fill them with hay. Lois?
Well, I don't know about the custom exactly, but I think it's because a wooden shoe could serve as a manger if a baby was placed in it. Of course, it's too small.
Well, that's hardly the answer. Gerard?
Well, it's because the children fill them with hay because St. Nicholas is supposed to come on a white horse on the night of December the 5th. And on December the 6th is St. Nicholas Day. And they fill their shoes with hay so that the St. Nicholas's white horse will have something to eat. And St. Nicholas takes out the hay and puts in their presents.
Well, Gerard, you've told me everything. Well, kids, we're off to a good start. And now then you can relax for a moment. It's recess time.
Christmas Day is almost done, but Christmas week has just begun. So, in between now and New Year, we wish health and joy and cheer. Now, Dad, remember, Junior's train was given to him, not you. And you can't get away with a candy cane as fast as you used to do. Dolls, drums, and horns are for girls and boys. And we oldsters just can't take it. 'Cause a headache comes from too much noise, and it's sometimes hard to shake it. If food is taken in excess and upset stomach rises, take Alka-Seltzer. Ease distress. It soothes pain, alkalizes. Now, here's a line to end my rhyme. Take heed. 'Twill pay you well, sir. At Christmas time and all the time, try friendly Alka-Seltzer. Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to the Quiz Kids, presented by the makers of Alka-Seltzer. Questions are sent in by you listeners. The sender of each question used receives a new Zenith portable radio with patented built-in movable wave magnet. This fine set will operate on its own self-contained batteries or on your electric light circuit and will work perfectly not only in your own home, but out of doors, in your car, in trains, in steel buildings, and under other ordinarily difficult conditions. We reserve the right to reword questions, and if like questions are submitted, the first received will be used. All questions become the property of Quiz Kids. Mail your questions to the Quiz Kids, National Broadcasting Company, Chicago. Quiz Kids, National Broadcasting Company, Chicago. May I remind you, too, that you can have fun playing a new question game, Beat the Quiz Kids, now appearing in many local newspapers.
Well, kids, here's the first report from the judges. So far, you haven't missed a single question. And your individual scores are Van, 60 points, Joan, 40, Gerard, 70, Lois, 20, and Claude, 30. And here is the next question. James E. Fraser of Rye, New York, is going to test your knowledge of physics. If, when you get up in the morning, you should open the door which separates your cold bedroom from the warm hall, and you should light a candle and set it on the threshold, which way would the flame point and why? Van?
Well, it would point out towards the warm room because the cold air would be going in there.
Well, can you explain that a little?
Well, the hot air, of course, being lighter for the volume than the cold air, would tend to rise. And the hot air in the one room would tend to go into the other room up near the ceiling, while the cold air would go into the other room near the floor. And therefore, the flame would be blown towards the hot room.
That's very good, Van. Thanks a lot. Now then, Marcella Festa of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, reminds us that next week is New Year's, and that we all should be taking inventories of ourselves to see what New Year's resolutions we should make. He wants to know what resolutions you kids think you should include on your list. Joan?
Well, I'd like to read one good book every week.
Well, that's a good resolution. I'm sure you can keep that up. Is there anything else you'd like to put on your list?
Well, that's about all.
Well, you're certainly making it easy for yourself, Joan. Claude?
Well, I'd like to keep up my good marks in school.
Well, I think that is a very good one. Yes, Sir Claude. Let's see now, Van?
Well, that's about what I was going to do. I was also going to see if I could answer more questions on the quiz kids.
That's the best one yet. Lois, how about you?
Well, I'm going to improve the bad marks and keep up the good marks. I have to.
That's fine. And Gerard?
Tolerance is what I need.
Well, all right for you sometimes, Gerard, but then sometimes I need it too. Well, that's a very good one, Gerard, and I wish you a lot of luck. Now, our next question here, S.J.T. Strauss of Chicago asks, what proverbs might prompt your mother to do these things? Keep you from staying up late, for instance. Lois?
Early to bed and early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise.
Very good. And what proverb might prompt your mother to keep you from, ask you to run to her the minute you tear your clothes? Claude?
A stitch in time saves 9.
It certainly does. And the next one, insist that you spend only part of your weekly allowance on things you like to buy. Van?
A penny saved is a penny earned.
That's very good. Now, that was too easy, I'm afraid, kids. Let's see if you can give a couple of more proverbs or quotations about money. Claude?
Penny wise, pound foolish.
Very good. Gerard?
He who steals my purse steals trash, but he who filters from me my good name enriches himself not, but leaves me poor indeed. That is from William Shakespeare.
It certainly is, Gerard, and that's marvelous. And then, of course, there's money makes the world go round, and money makes the mare go, and ere you consult your fancy, consult your purse. And, just a lot of them. Miss Henrietta Bryson of Salt Lake City, Utah, wants to take you on a vacation trip to 3 United States dependencies. Now, she describes each dependency as follows, and you are to identify at least 2 of them. The first is without a natural supply of fresh water. Without a natural supply of fresh water. And it's a United States dependency. Lois?
I think they're on Howland Island in the Pacific. I don't think, I understand that the Pacific is all around that, and that's salt water, and they can't use it unless they distill it.
Well, there's another one that's more familiar to everybody. We'd like to have that one, Lois.
Well, I don't know what that is then.
Gerard?
Out on the hot desert.
Well, yes, of course, we're talking about islands, United States dependencies. Well, the answer to the first one is the Midway Islands. That should be very familiar to you. All right, let's take the next one. The second, no private individual is allowed to own land. Lois?
Canal zone.
That's very good. Well, you made up for the other one, didn't you?
Mm-hmm.
And the third one, the third has a coastline that exceeds the length of that of the entire United States. Lois?
I think it's Alaska.
No, that's wrong. Claude?
Could it be the Philippines?
That's right. That's correct, Claude. Thanks very much. Mrs. Winifred H. Bennett of Portland, Maine, suggests that you kids probably have playmates named Jack, Bob, Harry, and Bill. She wants you to use each of these names in a sentence as a verb. Now, for example, the snipers will harry the enemy. Harry meaning to plunder, annoy, vex. All right, Claude?
Well, the two lovers build and cooed.
That's right. That's a good one, Claude. We can't keep the romance angle out, can we? All right, Joan.
What were the others? Bob?
Bob and...
The children bob for apples.
That's good. And now we have Jack left. Gerard?
Well, you can jack the car.
You sure can. And it's a good thing to have one, too, if it's needed. Well, that takes care of that one, kid. This next one here, Fred R. Michael of Davenport, Washington, thinks this one should be a pipe for smart kids like you. He asks how many 1-inch pipes would be required to carry as much water as one 2-inch pipe. Van?
Oh, before 1-inch pipes need to carry the same as a 2-inch pipe under similar circumstances, of course.
That's very, very good, Ben. I didn't think any of you kids would get that one. Miss Dorothy Siglin of Edgewood, Rhode Island, has squeezed 3 literary characters into the following 3 lines, and she thinks you should be able to identify them. Now, listen closely. 2 out of 3 on this one. Who raked the meadow sweet with hay? Dan?
Maud Muller, on a summer's day.
That's correct. Maud Muller on a summer's day raked the meadow sweet with hay. Now then, who pourest a full heart in profuse strains of unpremeditated art? Claude?
Well, maybe that could be Eurydice.
No. Who pourest a full heart in profuse strains of unpremeditated art? Well, let's take the next one. Let you think about that one. Whose eyes have all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming? Whose eyes have all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming? Now, that should be very familiar to you boys and girls. Well, a second one, Van, you were going to say...
Well, it might be Frankenstein's monster.
No. The second one would be, who pourest a full heart in profuse strains of unpremeditated art, would be the Skylark in the poem To a Skylark by Shelley. And whose eyes have all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming would be the Raven in the poem The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe. Quote the Raven, nevermore, unquote. Yeah. Zara Marie Boyer, I had to get that in there, unquote. Zara Marie Boyer of Elkhart, Indiana, waxes poetical to ask you this interesting question. You are to identify these Catherines, 2 out of 3. 3 Catherines in history have earned much fame. One ruled her country, and her husband, Peter was his name. The second had reason to fear London's famous tower, while the third served poisoned potions to pass an idle hour. Van?
Well, let me hear the first one again. I'm not sure about it.
One ruled her country, and her husband, Peter, was his name.
That would be Catherine the Great.
That's right. All right, how about the second one? Claude?
Well, the second one would be Catherine, Henry VIII's, one of Henry VIII's wives.
That's correct.
And what was the third one?
And the third one? While the third served poisoned potions to pass an idle hour.
Would that be Macbeth?
No. while the third served poisoned potions to pass an idle hour. Well, you've gotten 2 out of 3, so that's all that's necessary, boys and girls.
Sorry to interrupt, Joe, but once more, Father Time has caught up with you.
Well, thanks, Marvin. Kids, the judges will have the final scores in just a moment. Wait a minute. What is this? Hey, look, kids. There's a belated replica of Santa Claus coming into the studio. But wait a minute. There's something funny here. Come on out from behind those whiskers, Marvin Miller, and let's have an explanation of this Santa Claus business.
Well, all right, Joe. Wait till I take them off. You see, it's this way, Joe. I really feel like Santa today. I've got a free gift for every single person listening. Now, even Santa Claus can't do better than that. And I'm going to tell the folks about it or know the reason why.
Well, that's all right, Marvin, and we're mighty glad you did remember all of our listeners. So, fire right ahead.
It's the new 1941 Miles Weather Calendar, a token of appreciation from your friend and ours, your druggist. And there's a free copy waiting for every one of you. Now, I know thousands of you are already familiar with these famous Miles Weather Calendars, for they have been published by the makers of Alka-Seltzer for years. And I know you'll want to get your new 1941 edition. This new 1941 Miles Weather Calendar shows all the holidays and church days. It gives the moon phases and the sunrise and sunset times for each day. It indicates best fishing dates and planting dates for flowers, as well as for farm crops of all kinds, and contains a host of other helpful information. You'll find a great many uses for this new calendar throughout 1941. It is printed in attractive colors. All dates and figures are large enough to be read easily from across the room. And remember, this calendar is free. There's positively nothing to buy. You just go to your druggist and ask him for the new 1941 Miles Weather Calendar. He'll be glad to give it to you. But be sure you get your copy right away. Do it before his supply is exhausted. The new 1941 Miles Weather Calendar. Free from your druggist.
While the judges are finishing checking the report cards, we'll hear a word from Miss Charlotte Carr, director of world-famous Hull House, our guest observer for this evening. Miss Carr.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly, and thank you, Quiz Kids, for one of the most pleasant half hours I have ever had. With your amazing knowledge and your lovable personalities, you are bringing pleasure and entertainment to thousands, and you're having a perfectly grand time doing it. I sincerely believe that in addition, you are doing all children a real service. You are making adults aware of the truly great things that boys and girls can do if the opportunity is provided them. Every day at Hull House, I work with children. These children and others throughout the nation have potentialities for great and useful lives. Many of them, however, will be lost to the world through economic privation. Quiz Kids, it's my hope that in your accomplishments, we adults will see our responsibility to provide to children everywhere the opportunity to develop to the fullest whatever capabilities and talents they may have.
Thank you, Miss Carr. Well, kids, the judges have finished their deliberations. You missed only one question tonight, and the individual scores placed Van first, Gerard second, and Claude third. So you three, I'll see back next Wednesday night. You all were excellent students tonight, and I take pleasure in presenting all 5 of you, in behalf of the makers of Alka-Seltzer, these $100 denomination United States savings bonds. We hope you will be able to make good use of them in furthering your education. Now, before I announce the names of next week's newcomers, we'll hear a final word from Marvin Miller.
Safety pays. This winter, guard against the danger of a deficiency of vitamins A and D. Here's how you and every member of your family can do it, and for only a penny a day per person. Take One-A-Day brand vitamin A and D tablets every day. That's the name, One-A-Day tablets. 1 tablet a day is all you need. 1 tablet a day is all you take. And 1 penny a day is all it costs. Young and old alike, babies, growing children, older folks, all need vitamins A and D. Each One-A-Day tablet contains the same amount of vitamins A and D contained in 2 whole teaspoonfuls of cod liver oil, meeting minimum United States pharmacopoeia standards. One-A-Day tablets are pleasant tasting, no fishy, oily taste, and no aftertaste. Help yourself and your family to these 2 important vitamins this winter. Just listen to these low prices. 30 tablets, 35 cents. 90 tablets, only 85 cents. And 180 tablets, just $1.50. One-A-Day vitamin A and D tablets have been developed and are guaranteed by the makers of Alka-Seltzer, tested and approved by Good Housekeeping Bureau and commended by Consumer Service Bureau of Parents Magazine. Ask your druggist for One-A-Day tablets. Look for the big 1 on the package.
Thank you, Marvin. Friends, next week our newcomers will be Sheila Brenner, age 14, of Chicago, Illinois, and Pat Chandler, age 14, of River Forest, Illinois. This is Joe Kelly dismissing the Quiz Kids class until next Wednesday, New Year's Day, at the same time. Good night, kids, and a Happy New Year to you.
Good night, Mr.
Good
Kelly.
night, Kelly. The same to you.
Listen again next Wednesday night to the Quiz Kids. The makers of Alka-Seltzer present 3 programs each week, all of them on NBC networks. On Friday night, Alec Templeton Time. On Saturday night, the famous Alka-Seltzer National Barn Dance. And next Wednesday night again, the Quiz Kids. For interesting variety and entertainment, listen to the Alka-Seltzer shows. Marvin Miller speaking.
This is the National Broadcasting Company.
The makers of Campbell's Soups present The Campbell Playhouse. Orson Welles, producer. Good evening, listeners. This is Ernest Chappell speaking. Tonight, Orson Welles and the Campbell Playhouse observe a Campbell tradition of long standing. They bring you Charles Dickens' well-loved tale of Yuletide, A Christmas Carol. 4 years ago, the makers of Campbell's Soups went shopping for a Christmas present to give to all their friends. They found it in this story, Charles Dickens' embodiment of the very spirit of Christmas. And they chose well, because throughout the country today, in thousands of homes, it has become an important and beloved Christmas custom to listen to this story. Tonight, this 4th annual presentation is brought to you with a sincere wish that your Christmas may be a happy one, and with the hope that the retelling of A Christmas Carol may help to make it so. And it is more than that, for with this Christmas present to you, Campbell's say thank you for your purchases of Campbell's soup throughout the months gone by. At the Christmas season, this becomes especially manifest. Everywhere, grocers see their shelves of Campbell's soups dwindle more rapidly now than at any other time of the year. It used to be thought that the demand increased in preparation for the Christmas feast, but really it isn't that alone. Women like to have plenty of good soups on hand all through the holidays so that they can serve piping hot, nourishing platefuls at any family mealtime. The youngsters are on the go all day long, making the most of the Christmas vacation, and soup can be ready for them in a jiffy. There's health and happiness in good hot soup. Your grocer has Campbell's soups, 21 delicious kinds, awaiting your selection.
And it came to pass in those days that there went out a decree from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be taxed. And all went to be taxed, every one into his own city. And Joseph also went up from Galilee, out of the city of Nazareth into Judea, unto the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, because he was one of the house of the lineage of David, to be taxed with Mary, his espoused wife, being great with child. And so it was, that while they were there, the days were accomplished that she should be delivered. And she brought forth her firstborn son, and wrapped him in swaddling clothes, and laid him in a manger, because there was no room for them in the inn. And there were in the same country shepherds abiding in the field, keeping watch over their flock by night. And lo, the angel of the Lord came upon them, and the glory of the Lord shone round about them, and they were sore afraid. And the angel said unto them, Fear not, for behold, I bring you good tidings of great joy, which will be to all people. For unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, which is Christ the Lord. And this shall be a sign unto you. You shall find the babe wrapped in swaddling clothes, lying in a manger. And suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of the heavenly host, praising God and saying, Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace, goodwill toward men. Since the days of Caesar Augustus, all people have celebrated by joy the great joy which shall be to all people. For unto us was born this day in the city of David a Savior, which is Christ the Lord. And on this day, at least in the calendar of our year, we affirm the glory of our God by the laughter of our children. Every nation, according to its character and its taste, by some gift of gaiety, has enriched the tradition of this our solemnest festival. And because America is what it is, we are the fortunate heirs of the accumulated customs of almost 2,000 years of keeping Christmas. The best songs that have been sung are sung by us. The best games that have been played, we play, and the best stories ever told are ours to tell. For storytelling has persisted as a Christmas ritual, in spite of the printing press, a ceremony as hilarious and as serious as hanging a stocking, dressing the tree, and kissing under the mistletoe. And because Christmas is first of all for children, Christmas stories are fairy stories first of all. It is mildly surprising that the best of them all, which we're telling again for you tonight, is for everybody, and turns out to be a ghost story. I have endeavored, writes its author on its title page, I have endeavored in this ghostly little story to raise the ghost of an idea, which shall not put my readers out of humor with themselves, with each other, with the season, or with me. May it haunt their houses pleasantly, and no one wish to lay it. It is signed, your faithful friend and servant, Charles Dickens. Marley was dead to begin with. There's no doubt whatever about that. The register of his burial was signed by the clergyman, the clerk, the undertaker, and the chief mourner. Scrooge signed it, and Scrooge's name was good upon change for anything he chose to put his hand to. Old Marley was as dead as a doornail. Scrooge knew he was dead. Of course he did. Scrooge and Marley were partners. I don't know how many years. Oh, he was a tight-fisted hand at the grindstone. Scrooge, a squeezing, wrenching, grasping, scraping, clutching, covetous old sinner, secret and self-contained. Once upon a time, of all the good days in the year, on Christmas Eve, old Scrooge sat busy in his counting house. It was a cold, bleak, biting evening, foggy withal, and he could hear the people in the court outside go wheezing up and down, beating their hands upon their breasts and stamping their feet upon the pavement to warm them. The door of Scrooge's counting house was open, but he might keep his eyes upon the clerk, Bob Cratchit, who in a cold and dismal little cell beyond worked at his ledgers.
29, 9 and carry 2, 13, 17, 7, and carry 1. And...
Close the door, Cratchit. Shut out that infernal noise.
Yes, Mr. Scrooge.
Confound their impudence. Cratchit.
Yes, Mr. Scrooge.
You ought to stop at Fothergill's on your way home tonight and collect that 17 shillings and sixpence he owed me since Michaelmas, and tell him I shall have the constable over here if he doesn't pay it once.
Well, sir, Mr. Fothergill's wife is...
What do I care about his wife?
Well,
I want my 17 and 6.
I just thought it being Christmas...
Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas, Bob. Oh, Mr. Fred. Well, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you, Uncle. Oh. Merry Christmas, Uncle.
Huh? Bah. Humbug.
Humbug? Christmas a humbug, Uncle? I'm sure you don't mean that.
I do. Merry Christmas. What right have you to be merry? What season have you to be merry? You're poor enough.
Well, come then, Uncle. What right have you to be dismal? You're rich enough.
Ah, humbug.
Don't be cross, Uncle.
What else can I be? I live in such a world of fools. What's Christmas to you but a time for paying bills without money? Merry Christmas. A time for finding yourself a year older and not an hour richer. If I could work my will, every idiot who goes about with Merry Christmas on his lips should be boiled with his own pudding and buried with a stake of his own holly through his heart.
But, Uncle.
Nephew, keep Christmas in your own way. Let me keep it in mine.
Keep it? But you don't keep it.
Hey, let me leave it alone, then. What do you want, nephew? Christmas gift, I've no doubt.
I came to wish you a Merry Christmas, Uncle.
Ah, Merry